Okay, I have debated whether or not to make this video. I keep going back and forth on it. And I think I've settled on kind of like a feeling cute, might delete later, except it's going to be, I have some shit to say, but if the comments get abusive, I have no problem turning comments off. I've been known now and then to criticize the very flawed, very human, very imperfect politician Bernie Sanders. And not only that, to point out concerning patterns of behavior amongst his acolytes, amongst his superfans. And because no better term exists to describe that contingent of his fan base, I use the term Bernie Bros, which just really, really gets their panties in a twist. Now, politically, I probably align more with Bernie Sanders than anybody else in the Senate. And I know in terms of American politics, he seems really left, but he's actually like just like a tiny bit left. There's many ways he doesn't go far enough for me. I appreciate that he caucuses with the progressive Democrats. I very much appreciate his push for healthcare for all. There's loads of ways that politically he and I are very much aligned. It should probably come as no surprise to you that I voted for Bernie over Hillary Clinton in the primary. We could get into my intense loathing of Hillary Clinton and establishment, wealthy corporate Democrats who do all of the wrong things in another video. Wait, I've already done that in lots and lots of videos, but yeah. Okay, back to the subject at hand. So there's a lot of ways that the Bernie Bros or the Bernie fan base very much is giving cult of personality. And I'm not the only person who's talked about this by any means. In fact, I believe Knitting Cult Lady, who's an actual expert on cults, has talked about this. But for me, it's that presentation from a certain cohort of his followers that he can do no wrong, that he is irreplaceable, that he is a savior, and also simultaneously a victim. That he's been victimized by the DNC and he would be president if it weren't for the DNC, despite the fact that the American voters just like didn't vote for him in the numbers that he needed multiple times over. Now, do I think that he and progressive Democrats are a threat to establishment corporate Democrats in the DNC? Absolutely. But in particular, when it comes to Bernie, one of the things I've noticed is that if you criticize any of his positions or any of his behavior, much less the behavior of his fans, well, first off, you get called a bitch in the comments, like immediately. You get called a paid shill for the DNC, or you get told that you are no better than Trumpers, simply for saying things like, you know, maybe Bernie shouldn't be reapplying to run for the Senate in 2030 when he'll be 88 years old. And like maybe as an octogenarian, he should have thought any time in the last decade about passing the torch to the next generation. And that he is a member of the gerontocracy, how we have a serious problem in American politics, that our nation is ruled, governed by especially men, but also women as well, who are far older than the average American. How this aged group of people will not relinquish their hold on power. They have no interest in retiring, how that's resulted in a number of Democrats dying in office, leaving vacancies, important vacancies, where there should be a vote. And that we have watched politicians in their 70s and 80s actively suppress the rising members of the Democratic Party, actively suppress and hamper younger voices, deny them committee seats, etc. And just me mentioning Bernie in that conversation and raising very real, very legitimate criticisms of him as an 83-year-old man who very much gives this like, I can't step out of my position because nobody can do it as well as me. I am the only hope. And whether he is giving that kind of message, a lot of his followers definitely are. Like, we need him. He's irreplaceable. Every politician is replaceable. No politician is a savior. And if you act like that, you are absolutely falling into a cult of personality, whether that is of that politician's intentional making or whether that is the fan base constituting that framing and that dynamic. It's interesting to me, it's actually not that dissimilar from when I criticized Ruth Bader Ginsburg for not retiring, like how she could have retired and allowed a progressive justice to come into her seat. But instead, she hung on, refusing to relinquish her power and pass the torch at a suitable time, acting like nobody could take her position. And then look how devastating that was for us and for SCOTUS. I mean, that's a significant problem of a gerontocracy. There are many, is the way that these folks feel that there's nobody but them that can do the job. They also are completely out of touch with the fact that they are mortal and they will not be here forever. They're unwilling to face their own mortality, unwilling to relinquish their power, unwilling to pass the torch to younger generations. And it's a significant problem in American government. And it's a significant problem amongst the Democrats. And I know Bernie's not a Democrat, but he caucuses with them. And so I was like, what we need is to see a bunch of folks retire And, I would be for something like term limits or an age limit. By the way, you can't put your name in the hat for Pope if you're 80 or older. You can't vote in the papal conclave if you're 80 or over. We have 80, 85-year-old, 90-year-old Congress people and senators who've been in their positions for 30, 40 years. And there's all of these younger, more innovative voices who very much can reach the electorate, who resonate with the people. When people say, well, why are we losing younger members of the Democratic Party? Maybe because we're governed by a bunch of old people who are completely out of touch with the struggles of younger Americans. But getting back to Bernie, I was saying, we need elected officials who are older to be platforming and promoting and elevating younger members, encouraging them. I very much liken to how Biden did not for years do anything to put Kamala forward as a viable presidential candidate. He hid her in the background when he could have been presenting her to the American people, framing her in their minds as a capable and qualified leader, which she is. And folks said, well, Angela, you're not being fair because, Bernie did this Stop Oligarchy tour with AOC, and he's showing AOC to the masses. And I just want to be like, AOC is the most well-known member of Congress. I'm pretty sure she doesn't really need Bernie to introduce her around. Also, she's not in the same state as him. What's he doing to prepare and make way for his replacement in Vermont? He's filing re-election paperwork for 2030 when he's going to be 88. And just me daring to say that just got like a stream of angry comments. How dare I? Did I not understand that he's mentoring all of these younger folks? I mean, I'm not particularly convinced that the dynamic between him and AOC is mentor-mentee. It's more like colleagues who are on a tour together. And in fact, when he got asked in an interview about what he thought of AOC running for Senate, he had a temper tantrum and tried to storm out of the interview and would not answer the question, which is weird because for all the people in my comments who are like, he's prepping her, he's promoting her as a future senator, I haven't seen him do that. It's great that he partnered with her. I think a lot of good things happened from the Stop Oligarchy tour. That does not mean that Bernie is immune to criticism, and it doesn't mean that people who are criticizing an elected official are attacking them. It doesn't mean that you can't. I mean, I think everybody should criticize their elected leaders. They work for us. They're our public servants, and we should never, ever, ever act like if you offer valid criticism of them that you're somehow attacking them and that you're somehow like a big meanie. But when we look at Bernie and the kind of cult of personality around him, again, whether or not he has cultivated that himself, they can brook no criticism against Bernie or against their own group. And if you say anything, even like the most mild of things, like maybe at 83 he should think about retiring, you will get viciously attacked. And the way that engagement goes, it's so irrational. It feels like arguing with a Trumper in the comments. There's no politician that I'm so enamored with that I would flip out in the comments the way that some Bernie supporters do when you say anything about him that they don't like. And that is why I said, maybe we should be really conscious. It's not just the Trumpers who are prone to cults of personality. Any of us are susceptible to that. So people very much have that with Obama as well. Our politicians are never going to be our saviors. It's up to us, the American people, to save ourselves. But more than that, when we look at politicians and if we act like they're above reproach, there's no criticism that we can lob at them or their supporters, we're really doing all of us a disservice. We're doing democracy a disservice. The minute you try to point out the fact that there are a lot of Black Democrats for whom Bernie did not resonate in any way, and that amongst white male Bernie bros, there is a lot of misogyny and a lot of racism. And absolutely a portion of them pivoted to Trump. And a portion of them right now are having a little bit of a mentee bee. I have seen them up in the comments of some of the Black women who are my mutuals saying like pretty racist and misogynistic shit because those women are offering reasons why Bernie is failing to reach certain members of the Democratic Party or certain contingents of liberals and progressives and even leftists. Those are all things we should work through. We should open up, we should address, we should not immediately shut them down. But if your adoration for a politician causes you to immediately, viciously shut down any disagreement, rather than looking and saying, is there something valid here? That's a problem. We have no kings here in America. We should not be looking at any of our politicians as infallible, as perfect, as irreplaceable. This is a country run by the American people, or it should be. And I think it's important to understand you can criticize your own political party. You can criticize politicians that you like. You should criticize them. You should exhort them to do better.